So I'm very thankful to everyone that is connected, and especially to Christian for allowing me to be here today. We use the biochar in our farm with microbiology and organic extracts. So this was our farm in the year 2016. Our farm was a no way out farm. We were a broke farm because the soil was depleted. I used to have an experience and background in palm oil where we were able to solve a very difficult situation. So I was like trying to get to understand what we did then and try to apply it in our farm. So I'm very thankful to the people that have online information that we can reach, such as Paul Anderson, his Wood Gas page, or Elaine Ingham with her Soil Food Web, Dr. Johnson that explains a good compost, how you do a good compost, and Silvia Primavesi. And we use that information to get our own methodology for the farm. This is how the farm looks right now. We have been able to recover more than 50% of the farm, and now our numbers are not broke anymore. So my experience in palm oil was a decade before. We have a problem, even though we have exhaustive nutrition programs. So this was a 500 hectares plantation, and we had like a very good team. And even by doing these nutrition programs, we had a problem called Phytophthora. In Colombia, it's called PC, and it had already devastated half of Colombia palm oil plantations in that time. So for me as a manager, it was like a death sentence situation. We did many fungicide applications and we did surgeries, but we were not able to get them recovered. So at the end, we did a treatment with a good compost, and we began. In that time, we didn't know, but we were pyrolyzing all the sick material. We used barrels, and we would just burn the residues from the surgeries, and we would just put it in a barrel that is lighted up, and we were putting successive, like in buckets of material. Then we put water to turn it off, and we had to keep on going because there were like many surgeries we had to go. To give you an example, one palm that gets with this disease infects 6 palms around. So it's like an exponential rate. It's very bad. And what blew my mind in that time was an area that was so sick, like the authority of Colombia, it's called the ICA, they were going to kill the plants, they were going to kill the trees. And in those trees, we just applied compost with these carbons we made from the surgeries, and we didn't put anything else. And they just got better, like by themselves. So this to me was like an eye-opening. Right now, Colombia still has the problem, and so I kind of realized the problem is more in the soil than what you see up. So this is how our plants look like in our farm. My farm had a climate change issue. We had 3 degrees more than we used to have. So coffee has a very specific range of temperature where it grows. So we were told we could only grow cacao. My father did a a very big investment. He planted a clonal garden. That means he planted more than 20 clonal plants to see which one could grow in our temperature in our soil. And for our surprise, they were as bad as the coffee. So they decided to sell the farm. This is the extreme temperature patterns we're having. So the temperature is high, more than 3 degrees. Even in this picture, you can see is 43%, very extreme high. We have heavy winds and then follow by heavy rains and then no rain periods, like it can be 2 months with no rain. We have high winds. Last year, we lost 13 trees of our wind barrier, and we experienced hail as a ping pong ball. So this affects a lot the plants. And because of my experience in palm oil, I was sure we needed to have more root system, a very a strong root system for the plants to be able to resist these changes. So this is a picture of the type of soil temperature we had in the El Nino event this year. This was taken in January. So to the left is a plantation where no biochar was applied, and it has the same age at the time of the picture of the right. And if you can see, the temperatures are very different when you apply biochar to the soil. We have 21 degrees Celsius to 56 from the systems that they don't have biochar. So I think this is a very great potential for many crops. In the case of coffee and cacao, in our own farm, we were able to measure 12 tons per hectare per year of the woody biomass of cacao. That's just prunings. Then we have the cacao husks, which are the 70% of the production. But if the plantation has a rot pot disease, for example, then it can go higher. And in coffee, because we had a forestry operation also with coffee, we can have 20 metric tons per year of when we do the renewal of only woody biomass, or if it's pruning, 15 metric tons. So it's a very large quantity of biomass that is not being used, and it's an environmental problem. The coffee pulp, for example, is 80% of the production. Some farmers, they throw it to the river. And in avocado, we were able to measure also it's 150 metric tons. So the opportunity of biomass is very high. We use these very simple tilute systems, and we monitor the temperature, the resident time, and the weight of the batch. So in soils around the world, they are having a fertility problem. In our case, we had an acid soil and low organic matter soil. So by applying biochar, we were able to change these two parameters that for people that do farming, they know how difficult it is to change these parameters, especially because organic matter has these two types of organic matter. One is the organic matter that comes from leaves, and it comes from residues. This organic matter oxidizes every year. So by the time you end up the year, you end up having almost the same, or if it's very hot waves or we have an extreme temperature, we oxidize it very fast. So at the end of the next year, we don't have an organic matter to build up. And by applying biochar with the compost and with these residues we already have in the farm, such as grass, fermented grass, we can be able to go take up this organic matter because of the perdurance of the carbon. So we have a neighbor forest. We took advantage of this forest by using the leaf mulch the forest has. This has a microbiology that is already adapted to the temperature and to the climate, the area, the soil. So we took this. We did propagation of this microbiology, and we use molasses, cane syrup, even fermented coffee water that came after the process of the coffee. And this helped us to create our own recipe to apply them to the soil. So the organic matter, minerals, and microbiology applied with biochar can help a farm perform better. So as a plant, we use it both like a plant amendment, but we also apply it to production trees. So first I'm going to talk about the plant amendment. The doses and the like the amount of biochar we put, we are still working on that. So we did plots with 250 grams, 500 grams, 1 kilo, 750 grams, and when we monitor that. But what I can say is from our experience, evidence is that even from 250 grams on the whole when you were planting, we have high vigor, low nutritional needs of these plants. We turn down the reprocessing. When you do a plantation in the traditional way, you have to put in the budget like an amount of money to do replanting because plants die after the plantation. So what we found out with the biochar is this reprocessing went down more than 30%. There were a lot of nitrifying and phosphorus solubilizing microorganisms. So after the first year you apply the biochar, we took soil samples and we find out in the areas where we were putting the biochar, we were having nitrogen available, we were having phosphorus available. And for farmers, they know how expensive is the phosphorus. So we think there were these solubilizing microbiology that were able to get this blocking out, get this available for the plants. So we were not putting the phosphorus. It was just the biochar making this possible, this to take out the minerals. We also saw we had a cover crop of weeds, kind of to say. People hate weeds. We stayed with the weeds and we just planted the plants. And by applying the amendments, what we see in the long term is that these weeds, they shifted to a broader leaf coverage without needing planting without planting this cover crop. So this is good because broadleaf cover fixes nitrogen in the soil. So this is a more carbon storage system. And then when we see these root systems of these plants, they are strong, they are deep, they are very healthy. And so like a healthy soil helps you to have a healthy plant. So we had less pests, less outbreaks. So in the production plants, the plants we saw in the pictures, we didn't replant them all because it was very expensive. So we applied biochar with microbiology in the plate, and from the first year we saw the defoliated trees. They were skeleton trees. They regain this green color. They regain leaves. We observed there were blooms that were homogeneous, and the grains were not small, because people told me, because the trees were so old, some of them were 20 years old, I was going to have small, very small grains, so this was to be not a good yield. But from the first year, we saw these high size, like the size of the bean got higher. We had also we had like a crisis for our own, because we didn't expect to have these grains to be big. So our machine broke down, and we had in harvest season like our own crisis. In the years that we had like a winter time here is so in the years we had the rainy season, this is a fungi disease, and we managed to have very low or no rust at all. In the El Nino event, we didn't have an irrigation system, but plants could resist more than a month with no water. And like my plantation looked like irrigated. We didn't use any retaining polymer or synthetic polymer. We only used the biochar. When we have a moment, we see the plants like a sad, like they were stressed by the hot waves we have, because there are like hot waves. So even it's not raining, but we have this high temperature that gets, and it kills the plants. So when we see something like that is happening, we applied a foliar application with the carbon extract and with the extract we get from the forest, and we see the plants get better after the only application, a foliar application. So in the dry season, we got the help of the foliar application of the carbon. We also find the farm increasing production, so we are able to get our planning of planting more new trees. We have been able to do it. So at the end, is going back to the soil. Is when you fix the soil, then your plants look better. And I think that's it all. That's it for now.
Thank you very much, Angela. That's very, very nice to hear such a success story, actually. The floor is open for questions, and you got one from John Hoffmeyer. Can you clarify what you mean by foliar application with carbon extract?
Sorry, I lost the question.
Yeah, can you clarify what you meant with foliar application with carbon extract?
So we do like a tea bag. So this, first of all, I want to say this has no shortcuts. We need to formulate this really well for the soil you are treating and for the plantation you're having, kind of. So one thing that you put for cacao is different than from coffee. And we do like a tea extracts. So we take these big barrels and we ferment their what we want to formulate. And this because we immerse the carbons, we have at the end a foliar like an extract that has carbon in it.
Mhm.
So we have found it helps, and also we have applied the the wood vinegar, the wood vinegar, and the wood vinegar also we have found it's like amino acid for the plant, so it helps the plant in a drought condition.
Okay. The next question was from Akshay. How many seasons or years would you see the biochar soil enrichment properties to last, or they keep getting better, or?
So I think it is a successive. So the more years you apply, the more things I find interesting. Mostly in the first year, you see a better, like a greener plantation. You like the yield doesn't go that up in the first year, but with the successive applications, the we I was able, for example, for the coffee oil trees to get that one is like for is to be said like coffee you take 5 harvests and you have to prune. They say if you don't prune, you get a low yield. With coffee, I was able to like have like the same production for 2 years more, 1 year or 2 years more. That's gonna depend on the breed of the plant. Some plants get very stressed by high temperatures, by so they got kind of get old. So it's nonsense to, for example, do a pruning. This plant is not gonna perform well. But in plants where the genetics is very good, in Arabica beans, you can actually get 2 more crops.
Okay, nice. There are a couple of questions, so I think I have to filter a bit. So Ted Silverstein was asking, does the biochar application rate create increased nematode populations in the soil? So what's about the other part of the soil, the living organisms?
Yeah, from this year I partnered with a microbiologist who is taking those measurements because to measure it's so expensive. So we were able to measure only what we can get like in a soil sample or by yield. But what we have seen is areas in the farm where, for example, you had no microbiology. By applying the drench and applying these extracts, in the next year when you get the soil sample, you get a complete different soil. So, for example, this year I took 17 samples, and the FNC they ran it. So they
Mhm.
called me and they said I had a mistake. Like you took bad the samples, and I work with a 70-year-old uncle who's like he was very pissed off kind of because he said I how are you gonna say to me I'm not taking good samples. And so I had to struggle because they didn't want to give them to me. Finally, when they gave me the samples, the soil was like I was just apply fertilizer. It looked high and very high. All the like the nitrogen was available in a very high rate. The phosphorus was available in a very high rate, and the potassium. So this was for them like, this is not normal. Normally, you get the soil samples and you have to put more. So these are systems that when you have applied them for more than 5 years, when you have, so Dr. Johnson talks about a concept called sensum quorum. That means that it gets a lot of microbiology there. So they kind of reproduce. It's kind of systems where they are so happy. They have this comfort zone, kind of. So they reproduce in a higher rate, and they kind of cover the whole system.
Mhm.
So yeah, so for me, like each year I get a surprise, but a good surprise.
Yeah, that's it sounds like it. So that's very nice, healthy soil and a healthy environment for them to thrive. So another question was from Luki Fatia. Nice presentation, Angela, first of all. How do you apply biochar on the palm oil, cocoa, and the coffee plantation? Is it just a topsoil application, or do you have any specific method?
It's gonna depend. For example, for planting is in the hole. We amend 100% where the plant is going to be in the root system. We have to amend it all. For big plants like big trees that are presenting problems, that, for example, in the palm, we had like a ring around the tree where you dig like a ring around this root system, and then in that ring you take off the soil that is the soil, and then you applied a good compost. For example, in palm oil, we applied 50 kilos of compost for plant, and biochar was about 10 kilos. We in that time we didn't measure it because we didn't know what biochar was. We just were using this carbon that came out of the barrel, and so we didn't even know. But the problem that looked up in the tree, that it was this fungi disease, it was indeed something in the soil, that when we fixed the soil, the plant just healed itself.
No, that's very good. The last question for myself now. So I think it sounds very successful, everything. Um, is there any approach to neighboring farms or other people who want to copy your concept or outreach to other farms with similar issues?
Yeah, so in my area, because of the El Nino, they were like very impressed because they thought I had an irrigation system. And this was like accelerator for the neighbors' farms to get to learn. So we're doing workshops in our farm. We're teaching this. We want to reach more farmers to learn how to use the biochar. I also got connected with the coffee companies that sell coffee, and we are talking to them and developing a system for them, because this needs a lot of biochar. It's like in all these years I have applied more than 50 tons of biochar in my farm. So these systems, they need a lot of biochar, and where is the biochar?
Mm.
So that is like the problem I see. Farmers need to get biochar.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe that's a good connection to the previous presentation about the new methods of producing more biochar. So
Yeah.
thanks very much, Angela. If you have a second, there are, I think, two open questions in the chat if you have time. And I really hope that biochar will save all of our coffee, because that's useful for all of us. And I want to use the last minute to tell you about
So how
our.
many tons per acre? So like in cacao, I applied 3 kilos per plant. And in coffee, even from 250 grams per plant, it had a result. Like the picture I put there is from 250 grams. But for example, in the Nino event, I went in extreme, so I put more. I mixed it up with the good compost, with the Dr. Johnson approach. That is it's a high nutritional compost. So you have these fortified amendments. But I went up in coffee for 1 kilo per plant, and in cacao, 6 kilos per plant. And like the results are amazing, like production. I This year we're having these high prices in cacao, and fortunately I had cacao to sell. So it's like it's regaining freedom, and being able to do farming without going broke.
That's actually the best advertisement for Biochar I've heard for a long time. So yeah, thank you very much, Angela, for
Thank
your
you.
presentation. And if anyone wants to watch it again, it will be online in a couple of days. And from my side, the only thing I have to mention now before we end is that we are back in 2 weeks on the 20th of June, changing geographies. We will have a presentation about urban biochar and sustainable materials demonstrator from the UK, and a presentation by the Politecnico di Torino in Italy. So thanks a lot to everyone, and especially the presenters, and enjoy the rest of your day.